He kept this secret for 2 years. And when the world finally heard the song, they were never the same. There is a moment in the final episode of Pursuit of Jade that stops people cold. Not the battle scene. Not the tearful reunion. It is the last 30 seconds, when the screen goes dark and a single melody rises from absolute silence. A guzheng note, delicate and trembling, followed by a voice so raw it sounds less like singing and more like someone confessing something they were never supposed to say out loud. Millions of viewers sat frozen in front of their screens. Some cried before they even knew why. Fan pages flooded with the same question, posted in a dozen different languages. Who wrote that song, and how did they know exactly where it would hurt? The answer, when it finally came out, was the last one anyone expected. Zhang Linghe wrote it himself. Alone. In secret. And he did it before a single camera ever rolled. The beginning of a secret. It started in the winter of 2024, 18 months before Pursuit of Jade would debut on Netflix and shatter global streaming records. Zhang Linghe had just finished reading the original novel by Tuanzi Lai Shi for the third time. Not as an actor preparing for a role. As a reader who could not let go. He had been drawn to Xie Zheng in a way he struggled to articulate in interviews. The character was not simply a tragic nobleman hiding behind a false name. He was a man who had learned, after 16 years of grief and rage, that vengeance is not the same thing as healing. He was a man who falls in love while trying not to, who becomes vulnerable while pretending to be untouchable, who carries a wound so old it has become part of his posture.
Zhang Linghe understood something about that.
Something personal. Something he was not ready to explain publicly. So instead of talking, he composed. He was not trained as a musician in any formal sense. What he had was the same thing that made him a compelling actor, an obsessive attention to emotional architecture. He understood how feelings build, layer by layer, until they become unbearable. He applied that understanding to melody the way he applied it to a scene, slowly, precisely, with the patience of someone who refuses to move forward until it is right. He worked on a single piano in the apartment he kept outside of Beijing. He worked at night, mostly when the city was quiet enough that he could hear what he was feeling. Some sessions lasted until 4 in the morning. Some produced nothing usable. He scrapped dozens of versions that were too neat, too composed, too finished. What he was searching for was something that sounded like the moment before a person breaks. Not the breaking itself. The moment just before. What he was trying to say. The song was not written for Pursuit of Jade at first. It was not written for any project. It was written for a feeling Zhang Linghe had been carrying since a period in his own life that he has mentioned only in fragments across various interviews. A period of intense pressure, personal loss, and the particular kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people while feeling completely unseen. He has spoken in a 2025 Vogue China interview about his rapid rise to fame feeling, in his own words, terrifying. He has described becoming more conscious of how he behaves in public, as though the version of himself the world sees must always be managed, curated, contained. The engineer-turned-actor, who lost 25 kilograms and reinvented his entire life, carries within him a quiet but persistent awareness that transformation always costs something. The melody he composed was about that cost. It was about the thing that gets left behind when a person becomes someone new. It was about reunion, yes, but reunion with what was lost inside yourself, not just with another person. When he finally read the last chapter of the novel, the chapter where Xie Zheng and Fan Changyu stand side by side on the battlefield, no longer performing for each other, no longer hiding anything, he understood that what he had written in secret was the emotional truth of that moment. He sat with that realization for a long time. Then he made a decision that almost no actor at his level would make. He approached the production team not to pitch himself as the lead, which he was already confirmed for, but to pitch a song. The conversation that almost did not happen. The initial response was polite skepticism. Pursuit of Jade was already assembling one of the most decorated soundtrack teams in recent Chinese drama history. Rock Shen, the composer behind the background score, had built a reputation for blending traditional Chinese instrumentation with sweeping orchestral arrangements in ways that had earned him comparisons to some of the greatest names in film scoring. Vocalists like Zhou Shen, whose ethereal vocal range had become synonymous with prestige-era Chinese drama, were already being discussed for the main themes. Into this landscape walked Zhang Linghe with a voice memo recorded on his phone, and a melody he had never shown anyone. The music director listened to it once, then again, then a third time without speaking. What struck him, according to those present, was not the technical polish of the composition. It was the specificity of the grief inside it. There is a difference between music that sounds sad and music that has actually been through something. The melody Zhang Linghe had recorded in the dark of his apartment, on a piano with two keys that were slightly out of tune, sounded like the second kind. The decision was made quietly, without fanfare or announcement. The song would be developed properly, given to professional arrangers who would honor what was already there rather than replace it, and it would be held for the final episode. It would be the last thing audiences heard before the credits closed on the story of Xie Zheng and Fan Chongyu. And Zhang Linghe asked for one condition. Nobody was to know he wrote it until after the drama had aired. What happened when the world heard it? Pursuit of Jade premiered on March 6, 2026. Within 1 week, it crossed heat indexes of 31,000 on Tencent Video and 10,000 on iQIYI, benchmarks reserved for the rarest category of blockbuster. It debuted at number 6 on Netflix's global top 10 for non-English shows. Fan communities exploded across every time zone, but nothing prepared anyone for the response to the final episode. The song played over the last scene and the closing credits, and something happened in the comment sections of streaming platforms that is difficult to fully describe and easy to underestimate. People were not simply expressing that they liked it. They were writing the way people write when something has reached a part of them they do not normally let strangers touch. Long paragraphs, confessions, descriptions of listening to the melody on repeat at 2 in the morning and not being able to explain why they were weeping. The song was trending across social media in 11 countries before the final episode had finished streaming in its home market. And no one knew yet who wrote it. The reveal. The information surfaced the way the most significant revelations often do in the age of Chinese entertainment fandom, not through an official press release, but through a fan who had attended a closed production wrap event and posted a single sentence to a private forum. Zhang Linghe wrote the final song. Within 48 hours, it was everywhere. The reaction was not simple surprise. It was something more layered than that. Because once audiences knew, they went back to watch the final scene again, this time understanding that the man on screen, performing the last moments of Xie Zheng's long and costly journey toward love and wholeness, was also the man who had written the music underneath it. That the emotion lifting off the screen was not only acting. That the thing you heard in the melody had been living inside him long before any director called action. Some of the most viral posts from that week were not about Zhang Linghe's face or his fashion campaigns or his engineer-to-actor origin story. They were about the unbearable intimacy of what he had done. He had let the most private version of himself into the most public project of his career, and he had done it in a language most people would never trace back to him. He had done it in music, in secret, before a single camera rolled. And when the world finally heard it, they were never the same. What it left behind. The Pursuit of Jade soundtrack is now regarded by critics and audiences alike as one of the finest in recent Chinese drama history. The background score by Rock Shun is praised for its restraint and emotional precision. The vocal performances by Zhou Xin, Zhang Baiken, and others are analyzed and celebrated across fan communities in multiple languages. But ask almost anyone who watched those final credits roll, and they will tell you the same thing. It was the last song. The one that came from nowhere, from silence, from a man sitting alone at a piano that was slightly out of tune. That is the one they still cannot get out of their heads. The silence after that final melody did not last long. Within weeks of the reveal, Zhang Linghe found himself in a position he had carefully tried to avoid, being asked, in every interview, every press appearance, every carefully moderated fan interaction, to explain the song. He mostly deflected, not with evasion, but with the particular kind of quiet that belongs to people who know that some things lose their power the moment they are fully explained. He would smile in that controlled, composed way that his fans have cataloged across thousands of screenshots, and he would say something measured about how the character moved him, how the story felt personal, how music sometimes captures what words cannot reach. He never told anyone exactly what the song was really about. But those who know him well, the handful of people who were present during those long nights in the Beijing apartment, say that the truest answer is simpler and more devastating than anything he could deliver in a press junket. The song was a letter. Not to Fan Changyu. Not to Xiezheng. Not even to the audience that would eventually sit in the dark and feel it move through them like something they had lost and almost forgotten. It was a letter to the version of himself that almost did not make it here. The boy who weighed 100 kilograms in a university dormitory and did not recognize his own reflection in a friend's eyes. The electrical engineering student who had no reason to believe that the thing quietly burning inside him was talent and not just longing. The young man who said yes to a talent scout in 2019 on what must have felt, in that moment, like the most reckless decision of his life. That person deserved a song. Zhang Linghe just took 2 years, an entire drama production, and 40 episodes of restrained, devastating performance to finally give him one. Pursuit of Jade has ended. The streaming numbers have settled into the kind of permanent record that gets cited in industry reports. Zhang Linghe has moved on to new projects, new campaigns, new roles that will ask different things of him. But somewhere on a piano with 2 slightly out-of-tune keys, a melody still exists exactly as he first played it.
Raw.
Unpolished. Completely true.